We're starting recording the June 28th OpEdNews.com Zoom session. So Peter, you had a suggestion for a topic of conversation? No, you got to unmute.
Felix Mystical.
He's got to unmute. I'm trying to do it. It doesn't want to unmute. Why is that?
Oh, now I'm unmuted, I think.
There you are. We got you now.
Oh, there you go now.
Oh, what did I say? I said, how about as a topic, as a writer on OEN, what do I hope to cause in the reader's life? And as a corollary, what would best accomplish that?
I didn't catch the beginning of that. Can you repeat?
Yeah, as a writer on OEN, what do I hope to cause in a reader's life?
You can do a lot. You can accomplish a lot.
Well, okay.
Words are powerful. In the beginning, there was the word. I think Mike wrote a very powerful article today at the top.
Thank you, Martha.
Yes, about Black supremacy. I don't know if others read the article, but it's well worth the read. Very prophetic, very prophetic.
Thanks, Martha.
Has everybody seen it? I unfortunately haven't seen it. I will too, but it doesn't help for this conversation.
Mike, you
Why don't
can
you
sum it up.
summarize it, Mike? Why don't you summarize the article?
I was trying to say that in the biblical tradition, prophecy turns things upside down. Bell Hooks, for instance, talks these days about the white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist patriarchy, revealing that Blacks have, African Americans, have a consciousness that they're living in a white supremacist culture. The article attempts to turn that upside down by recalling something that happened to me when I was teaching about the African diaspora in Cuba, when I was in Cuba, back around the year 2000, something like that. But Roberto Fernandez Retamar, a Cuban poet laureate and historian, spoke to our students there. I had about 20 of them, and about half of them were African American. And he began by saying, and his skin color looked like mine. And he was a man of about 70 years old at that time. And he began by talking to the students and saying, I, who am more or less Black, and immediately got the attention of the students, of course. And he went on to say that when he was young, his adoring mother always told him that he looked like a Spanish prince. But when he went to do his graduate work in Paris, he found out that his colleagues there thought that he was, as he said, a Moor. And so it led him to think, oh, I'm different from them. And he went on to say to the students that when you think about it, African Americans, and Cuba was a distribution point for slaves. When you think about it, African Americans are the most beautiful, the strongest, and the most intelligent people in the world. And the reason for that kind of, we would say, in contradistinction to white supremacy, the reason for that kind of Black supremacy would be the process by which these slaves were selected. When their vendors in Africa were selecting them, they looked at them very closely for their strength, for their capability of reproducing, that is their attractiveness, and for their intelligence, because they wanted to get a good price. They put them on the boats, and over the Middle Passage, about half of those people typically did not survive. When they got to places like New Orleans and Charleston, they were put on the auction block and examined by their buyers for their strength, their intelligence, and their attractiveness. They looked at their teeth, they looked at their arms, they looked at everything that could possibly make them more valuable to the buyers. And those were selected. And the strongest of them survived once they're in the fields because the conditions were so harsh. So the survivors from that long process ended up being, as he said to our students, the most beautiful, the most intelligent, and the strongest people in the world. And I'm saying that in the prophetic tradition, which turns things upside down, there's a good way of countering white supremacy would be to say, white supremacy? No. Actually, when you think about the whole process and you look at the accomplishments of Blacks in terms of their contributions to culture, I'm thinking about music, I'm thinking about dance, I'm thinking about art, and thinking about athletics. When you think about them, they are superior in so many ways to white people. So the prophetic statement would be, they are God's chosen people. They are, as in the Bible, the poor and the oppressed are always the chosen people of God. So that was more or less the argument that I was making.
You know, there's a kind of a panic among whites. I mean, I get these articles from Paul Craig Roberts. I turn down some of them where he's basically saying there's a war against whites. And, you know, the Democrats are working with the blacks to take away the power and the influence of what, I mean, he's got this whole war against whites thing going. And he's not the only one. I mean, there's a conversation out there along those lines right now. And that's, you know, I think of the idea of homosexual panic. I think there's like a war against whites panic too, where I look at it, I see these articles coming in from him, and I shake my head, and it's like, oh, come on, really? I mean,
He's so insightful otherwise. He's a very insightful writer, I find.
He is, but when he gets on that bent, it's like, oh, please.
Well, Mike, I want to ask you about eugenics. Because you just laid out a really great argument for eugenics.
Just to stop before we go on into that, I've read the failure of laissez-faire capitalism, and Roberts has to have evolved considerably rhetorically since then, I guess. I got to get more close to him.
Yeah, well, he came out of the belly of the beast.
Yes, he did, for sure.
But what's the difference between your argument about this prophetic tradition and eugenics? Or not the prophetic tradition, the selection, the unnatural selection process.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand, Peter.
Well, you're saying that the argument is that professor gave is that Black people are selected through a harsh culling process for the best and the brightest, and the rest of them were thrown overboard on the way over. In fact,
you could say that they were also selected for passivity because they didn't want them rebelling.
I wonder if they say that. I'm not sure about that one.
Well, the minute you say they're selected for anything,
yes,
you're talking about eugenics.
True.
An unnatural selection process. Peter has it right.
You're talking about the life process, right? And
I'm talking about what you described is exactly what people like Shockley were trying to promote, and sterilizing Black people. So they, like trying to promote a master race by making everybody white and killing off everybody else is the same thing. It just seems to have one has, well, I guess they both have commercial interests behind them.
I think the whole discussion is kind of stupid.
have to be sensitive to the irony of Roberto Fernandez Reytamar's presentation. He wasn't saying that, I think, literally. It's not to be taken literally. It's to be.
Well, that's fine. I can get that.
Yeah.
But it is the same argument. It is the eugenics idea wrapped up very nicely.
Okay, and then, okay, what's the conclusion there? I mean, so.
Well, if he, the reason that is so interesting is that it seems so true at a certain level. So now we're saying actually you could breed or select or cull the human race to get better people, which is a really crazy and evil idea, by the way, as you know.
And that might be one conclusion one could draw from that, but you could draw other conclusions as well from the story. And the one that was intended was that the people that we consider second-class citizens, the people that we consider inferior, are actually quite beautiful, quite strong, and quite intelligent.
What do you mean we, pale-face?
Yes, we, the white culture, the white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist patriarchy, as Bell Hooks says.
The European historical culture from the time that slavery was initiated from the old world to the new world. Unnatural selection is a good term for the whole thing, but I don't think that Peter's writer here is actually meaning that should happen. He's just describing the fact that it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing about the idea that's so dangerous and nasty is that it purports to be backed up by science and Darwinism and so on. But what Darwin actually showed was that diversity is the ticket to species survival.
Yes.
If you don't,
I got to throw in one more piece, and that is that in order for slaves to survive, they had to shut up. They had to be passive. And the same thing is the case for Native Americans too. Those who stood up to the authorities, those who fought for their integrity, they were killed.
well, you can follow that argument to a lot of scary places.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I was a young man, I had occasion to sail on a square-rigged ship that had been dug out of a sandbank in Africa, and it was an old slave ship. It was a little bigger than a city bus, and if you considered what you'd have to do to get across the ocean when you might be a month or two delayed by the weather, then waiting for somebody to die before you threw them overboard was just a formality, because you would calculate how much food you had to make the rest of the voyage and count out a few more and throw them overboard. I mean, a lot of people were just taken out on those ships and dumped in the ocean on the way. And so it didn't matter if they were passive or not. They're just numbers.
Well, James Carville said that Trump isn't going to run for re-election. They say that he says that the polls are so against him that the Republicans is going to find somebody else.
How do we get on this?
Yeah.
Because the other thing was really stupid and I was losing patience.
I was just going to put in one more remark on that, and that is there's the assumption that these best and the brightest are going to reproduce offspring that are also the best and the brightest. That doesn't necessarily hold.
And there have been studies that when you have the best and the brightest work on a task, and then you have a collection of people, the collection does better. It's a bottom-up solution that works better. People, when they come together and cooperate with each other, then they do better than when you cherry pick from the top.
Well, that's because you can't tell what the best and the brightest are going to have to be by the time they grow up.
No, I'm talking about like working on projects from businesses.
Well, I'd like to get back to the question of whether Trump's going to decide not to run again. That's the first time I've heard that mentioned.
Me too. I haven't heard it before.
Where'd you hear it?
James Carville just said it on one of the news programs.
Oh, James Carville. Yeah.
I can't believe he would so easily relinquish the power that he so craves.
Well, it looks like if he runs, he's going to lose very badly. So it's a question, I think.
I'll be leaving you now. Love you, bye.
Whether he'll be humiliated or try to bow out gracefully.
Well, James Carville was as shocked as anybody when Trump won, you know.
Yeah, I don't buy it. You know, I was predicting that come around December, the Republicans would see the poll numbers that would indicate that Trump was going to get killed and it was going to take Republicans with them, including the Senate. And it's doing that, but they can't let go. They're holding on to him and they're not going to let go. I don't think so.
It doesn't look like Trump himself would decide not to run.
Oh, no.
But if the Senate, if the situation continues to deteriorate for him, the Senate might turn against him.
That's right.
And not really allow him to run again.
Well, what if they dumped Trump and nominated Mitt Romney? Mitt Romney, voted for voted to convict in the impeachment trial, and it's a way for the Republicans to say mea culpa, but it gives them some chance of saving the Senate.
That's a good point. Interesting, anyway.
Interesting, yeah.
I think they certainly have made decisions that whether they like it or not, they're going to go down with the ship.
I think so, Bill. I agree with you.
Whether they like it or not, I couldn't quite hear it.
Whether they like it or not, the Republicans, especially in the Senate, which we're thinking about, have done things that are going to make them go down with the ship in the 2020 election. Where the Democrats are likely to win the Senate, even if the people that they win the Senate with, turn out to be, shall we say, some of the more center or righter Democrats. And I wouldn't want to start naming names because we ain't got time.
Well,
But I think the down ballot is looking real good, depending on how big the margin actually turns into against Trump, because there's a lot of people that are going to say, "Oh, Republican, I'm voting against all of those son of a bitches." Pardon me.
That's right.
Doesn't
They're thinking that.
I'm Carville.
In 2018, the last congressional election, the Democrats in the House, whatever the phrase is, they won everything. And I think the Republicans are starting to see that they just might do that in the Senate elections this year. And the most powerful Republicans who are up for re-election are doing very badly.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Wasn't it great that on Tuesday, all these progressives beat the people that were endorsed by Schumer and Hillary?
Yeah.
Pelosi. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So what is that grand total? 6 more progressives in the House?
Well, okay. It's not huge, but it's a movement. It's chipping away, and it's showing that it can be done. And you know what? It's Justice Democrats, I think, are the big funders of it. They got behind AOC, and I think that they're going to do it more, and I think they're going to see more support and more money. And, I sent them money. I sent money to a couple of the ones who won, and I wish I had known about the other ones too. I mean, I don't send a lot of money. It's a couple bucks, but if everybody did it, it could be huge.
That's true. That's really true.
There's so many different groups that are sending out solicitation messages. It's just as Democrats connected with Our Revolution, or other groups? Or do
Yeah,
you-
there's Progressive Democrats, Our Revolution, Justice Democrats. I think those are the three main ones. So
It's not all one group. So anyway, I donate to Jace to
How
promote.
much sway will they, and so this is where I'm politically uninformed, how much sway do they actually have, let's say, in the DNC, which is pretty well, directed by the financial industry, it would seem to me.
no, you're right.
So, I mean, it's great, obviously, to get, more progressives in the House and if somehow miraculously in the Senate. But what are they up against? They're up against the DNC, who have now twice betrayed the progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
And they're going to keep doing it. We just have
And
to
they're
keep on.
Here's a way to put the question. What degree of majority must the Democrats, must progressive Democrats achieve in Congress and, if possible, the Senate, so that they will, rather than the Democratic National Committee insiders, be the ones who call shots? What's the majority necessary?
big.
Veto proof?
I'm going to go back to my theory, to chaos theory. You don't have to get 50% plus one when a new trend emerges. When a new trend emerges, things can happen really quickly, and things can happen explosively. And a friend of mine who's been on this call, Chuck Pinocchio, he talks about a 3%. You need 3%. It doesn't have to be this massive 50% plus one. It just doesn't necessarily have to do that. We've got I think in Illinois, Dan Lipinski was knocked out. He's going to be gone. And there were 3 or 4 on just this past Tuesday. It could be that by the time the election rolls around in November, there are 10 additional ones or 15.
Yeah, could be. And this Black Lives Matter thing that has gone across the world as a result of what happened in Minneapolis is stunning. You talk about a new paradigm. This just might be it.
Oh,
Do
yeah,
you believe that that's a good argument for Biden to have a black woman running with him instead of Tammy? What's your last name?
I was shocked, disappointed, and enraged that the leadership of the Democratic Party chose Biden. Every other person running for the Democratic nomination was far more talented than he was, far more articulate than he was, far brighter than he was. And I think Biden is in the awkward position of he can't choose somebody as his vice president, male or female, who's brighter than he is. A goddamn toad is brighter than he is. When you look back at all of Biden's elections to the Senate in Delaware, they were all easy elections except for the first one. That was the only one that was close. All the others were a cakewalk for him. He's never had to fight for anything.
I'm more interested in, but I think we all agree Biden sucks, right?
Everybody.
All right, so let's move on to something that we can have some meat to it. And I think,
That's what I was asking. Should he have
in
a
terms
black
of which-
person run with him to reach out to this powerful movement that's rising
my
up?
theory is that you want to bring in a vice presidential candidate that'll help you win. And so you don't pick somebody from a solid blue state, because that doesn't help you at all. You pick somebody from a swing state and who can help bring it along. So, I've been looking, and they're not progressives, but
They've got to be.
Huh?
They've got to be progressive. It's got to be, somebody that talks like a black Elizabeth Warren. Who do we have?
I don't think there are that many.
Right.
I think, we've got Val Demings down in Florida, and I think that she could help flip Florida, but she's a former sheriff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know much about what she was like as a sheriff, you know, but I think I mean, Florida, somebody from Florida would be good. I can never remember her name, the governor of Michigan. She's not black, but she's a female, is another one. But I've been looking at Val Demings. I was very impressed by how she handled herself during the impeachment hearings. She was pretty strong and sharp there.
I agree.
And you don't like Stacey Abrams?
I don't. No, I think she's a neoliberal. Yeah. And she's,
Her
What about the woman who was the attorney general in California? I can't think of her name.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala.
yeah.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah, she's not going to help she's not going to help. She might even hurt. She
She's
didn't
whiter
even,
than I am too. So
she's what?
whiter than I am.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I thought that was an advantage.
Why is Stacey Abrams a neoliberal?
I saw Kamala defending the Democrats not going for the bill in which the Republicans gave them one little concession about the lynching and then took everything else away. I thought she was very good defending that and telling Senator Cornyn, you can't do that to us. You can't make us take one piece and get rid of 4 or 5. Did any of y'all see that?
I didn't know.
No.
Oh, I saw it yesterday, and she was she put Cornyn in his place. It was on the Democrats line there, whatever the name of that thing is, and I thought she did a real good job. But she said, why don't you like why exactly don't you like Abrams? I think she's got more energy hardly than anybody else. Georgia is a pretty big state. She could flip that one, I've been looking at her, and maybe she did herself a disservice by saying, yeah, I would like to do that. You got a nolo episcopari. No, I don't want to be a bishop, but I know she does.
I don't think that she could flip Georgia, and I don't think that Georgia is the state that you want to go after. I think you know, you want to go after one of the states that are looking like they're possible to flip. So, you know, that's Michigan and Ohio and Florida and North Carolina and Pennsylvania.
But don't you think that
That's why we've got Biden in the first place.
Yeah, that's probably
the
true.
real need is to bring progressives on board, though, even if that means, and I think that means taking somebody like Elizabeth Warren, because there's a lot of progressives in the Democratic Party, and we are not energized at all by the Biden selection.
No.
As you would.
Yeah, but Warren, what? She's going to help us win Massachusetts? I mean,
Warren, I don't think that's the only reason you select a vice president is to win some swing state. There are other reasons, and I think one of the reasons I would see, and I'd be energized by, would be by taking somebody like Elizabeth Warren. There are progressives all over the country like that, I'd say.
Elizabeth Warren is a turnoff. As bright as she is, as well prepared as she is, as articulate as she is, she comes across like a WASP school mom.
She's a school mom. Yeah, agree. And how, when push comes to shove, is she going to buck the DNC? Is she going to buck the financial industry?
no.
No. I mean, she says she is. I mean, she talks tough about Wall Street banks.
I'd like to see Elizabeth Warren stay in the Senate where she can have a lot more influence.
Actually have some influence.
Good point.
Well, somebody said Treasury Secretary.
Yeah.
If she would, keep up with her word about being tough on Wall Street.
Well, Martha, you brought up the question about a black woman vice president. What are your thoughts?
I was thinking that we've got a lot of people on deck on the other side too, and Joe Biden is practically a non-consideration. If he's attracting the conservative element, he could lose it altogether very quickly into the term with all the pressures on him. So you're essentially, the vice president is really crucial. And therefore, we might want to find a compromise between a progressive and a conservative, namely Stacey Abrams.
But it's hard to imagine Biden running for a second term. That means that his vice presidential candidate is probably going to be the pick of the DNC to run for president in 2024.
Yes.
And so we're going to be stuck with whoever Biden appoints, which is what it's going to be. And, you know, it couldn't have been any more dumb, the one that Hillary picked. You know, I can't even remember his name, that senator from Virginia. What was it?
Is it Tim Kaine?
Kaine, right.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it would be nice. Yeah. I mean, maybe you're right. You know, I just, I don't know. I would like to see somebody who can actually help the platform to win, and somebody I'd look forward to being president.
Yeah.
Look forward to Trump not being president, that's for sure.
No, I'm looking to 2024.
Oh, 2024.
I want to see somebody who could actually run for president.
I'm looking to 2028 at AOC.
Yeah.
I love AOC.
That's a woman.
She could run in 2024.
What's everybody got against Kamala Harris? What are y'all's greatest disagreements with Kamala Harris as Biden do?
She appeals to a very small element, I think. She antagonizes.
Is she really a progressive, or is she just, you know?
She's not.
If she went by what I saw yesterday, she's better than Biden.
That could be her.
That's a low bar, Bill.
I don't mean to set too low a bar. I used that in a story I wrote the other day about the bar. But, I just, you know, I watched her do this yesterday, and it was the first time I think I'd seen her speak for more than, you know, a 30-second sound bite, and she let Cornyn have it.
Oh, she thinks very fast on her feet. I admire her intelligence a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think she'll bring energy to the ticket.
There's Michelle Lujan Grisham, New Mexico's governor. She's Hispanic.
Or Tulsi Gabbard, is she out of the game altogether?
Oh, the Democrats hate her. I think she's great. She would be a great one, and she could really, I think, do the job. But I don't think that she does that.
Well, that's her name. The New York Times wants Tammy Duckworth. They wrote a huge tribute to her today, endorsing her for vice president.
Yeah, you got a veteran.
Well, what is her ethnicity?
She's Asian American, part Asian American. So she has the person of color factor going for her.
Just a tinge.
Tell us more about the one from New Mexico.
She's basically a steady person, and she's been very clear in shutting down the state for the virus, very protective of public health, and she says what she thinks, and I really appreciate that. I'm also thinking that she's probably a good administrator, and that's really what we need right now. Someone who, like, I've heard her in conferences saying, okay, I'm going to do what is not easy for me. I'm just going to listen right now. And that certainly gets my attention. So she's a real person, and she's an administrator. And I have enormous sympathy, I don't know what the word is, for the person who does take office next year. I mean, what a mess they're going to inherit, and they're going to need to be a clear organizer.
Yeah.
That's the skill that's needed more than anything.
Is she a progressive or centrist?
Well, she's a Democrat. She was in the House of Representatives.
Mhm.
I'm not like, I don't, you would have to define progressive to hear, you know, for me to respond to that. I think she's a realist. So for example, in New Mexico, our primary income comes from drilling gas and fracking in the southern part of the state, and that has completely shut down. And so now nobody has any money for schools. So she's really aware of the complexities there and that it's not possible for her to please everyone. I am not a proponent of solar or wind, which are possible here because we have sun and we have wind, but what goes into manufacturing, both of them require, you know, it's just ecological disasters, and solar panels are hazardous waste at the end of their life cycle, all that stuff. So I'm on the page of recognizing that there's a lot that is not looked at when we say we want renewable power, which is obviously a big issue, and it's a progressive issue. It's in the Green New Deal, but there's so much in there that's not visible and not, due diligence hasn't been done. So I'm just going to say I still stand by, I'm surprisingly finding myself supportive of Michelle Lujan Grisham just because I think she's real and she's an administrator.
May I comment just for a minute since we're talking about New Mexico? I had occasion to work on a science project down in southern New Mexico at something called the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant.
Of course, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, which I'm sure you know about. And
it's where, just so everyone knows, it's where a country stores its nuclear waste.
Yeah, and the project that me and Dr. Phillips did was showing that it was geologically absolutely unsuitable a place to put nuclear waste because it's a karst land. That's why Carlsbad Caverns is there.
Terrific.
Eddy County is what we're talking about, New Mexico. And I give you that preface to just say, knowing what's down in there and what the stakes are, I'll go for a gigantic Marshall Plan size expansion of wind, especially, and solar power over the current status quo of fossil and nuclear fuel utilization.
Well, and it's not possible because if you took all the batteries that are manufactured right now at Tesla's battery factory, if you took all of the batteries manufactured in 1 year, and Tesla has the largest battery factory in the United States, you would power the entire US grid for, I think, something like 3 minutes or 3 hours. I mean, it's an astounding number. So
the wind,
there's just so much involved that people are unaware of when they look at it, and the infrastructure that we already have with utilities. When you pay your electric bill, if you're connected to the grid, 80% of the bill is about the infrastructure within the electric utility. Only 20% is dedicated to the fuel source. And so the utility's main expense is in maintaining its infrastructure. It's tremendously expensive. And that gets really messed up when people get rooftop solar, for example, because the utility is still obliged to provide them electricity 24/7 when they demand it. And we're not, I'm talking in fragments, but the fact is there's so much that we're not looking at when we look at energy and the true costs involved. So yeah, it's a series of conversations that we're not informed about.
That's pretty much what the Michael Moore documentary reported, that a lot of these alternative sources really aren't viable financially or
Right.
economically.
Planet of the humans, yeah.
May I ask a question about New Mexico? Albuquerque has always been a lower income area in general, but all the money is in Santa Fe and Point North. Don't they have much more power?
Power with what? And I don't know that I would agree with that. I live in Santa Fe, and I'm pretty solidly, in the poverty line, and yet I've got a roof over my head today. I'm not sure. I don't own it, but I'm not sure what you're meaning there.
Well, I'm not sure either, but my impression always was that the wealthier people that I read about always came from Santa Fe, and the poorer people that I read about always came from Albuquerque.
Okay.
Just, I'm just.
I would say that's there are plenty of poor people in Santa Fe, and there are plenty of wealthy people in Albuquerque.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I lived in the barrio in Albuquerque for about 6 months, down on Silver Street and 8th, and there's plenty of poor people down there. I was really I don't know who I'm talking to because your number is up there, but I was actually talking more about wind, which I've also done more science in than geology. I was a field physicist during that.
You want me to talk about problems with wind?
Well, I don't. I certainly don't see a gigantic back end of pollution and disposal.
Okay, so let me just start by saying that when wind turbines were only 400 feet tall, now they're 600 and 800 feet tall. But when they were only 400 feet tall, each blade weighed 22,000 pounds.
Wow.
At the end of their life cycle, no one knows what to do with them. They do not biodegrade. If you put that in a small town's landfill, you're gonna use up their quota pretty quickly.
There's a lot. Go on.
Pardon?
Go on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go on. Finish.
They have a life cycle of maybe 20 years. It could be longer, but anyway. And then in manufacturing them, at the gearbox, the magnet, it's a neodymium and dysprosium are required. And mining for that in China is about the most devastating thing you can do for, I don't know how much area, but the people who live there, who live nearby, their hair falls out. I mean,
why do they need neodymium and dysprosium, which I know is rare earths from science?
Yes, the magnets. To run the gear shaft that turns the blades.
So what is the best solution at the humanitarian and financial level combined?
And ecological and ecological?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So basically, we cannot, when people ask me that question, they're really asking, what can we do to continue our current level of comfort and convenience in this Western culture?
Yeah, without killing people and reading horror stories all the time about fire coming out of the water faucet, something humanitarian.
Right. I'm certainly not asking that we keep on at current levels of consumption without any thought to voluntary population control and voluntary regulation of ourselves. No, we know that can't go on. We know that's just all the lemmings heading to the cliff. But there's got to be some way to provide energy, and having blades of windmills disposed someplace in a windmill disposal place isn't the same thing as having a waste isolation pilot plant that in a 200-year rain, it's going to come out to the surface and get in the Pecos and get in the Rio Grande.
So I'm just saying that these other methods are also ecologically harmful. I mean, I live a half a mile from St. Francis Drive, and yes, we get, every single night, we get trucks filled with nuclear waste coming from the Los Alamos National Lab, driving down to Las Cruces. This is just our normal. So, we absolutely need to reduce our consumption. And in order for that to happen, we need leadership that can say, this is what we need to look at. How can we reduce our consumption? I've tried to reduce my consumption by 3% per month. And I can't say I've been successful. I think it's really hard to do. I don't know if I was part of a community of people dedicated to reducing consumption, if that would make it easier. But that's the question. One of the questions, we also need to look at how can we reduce our overall energy consumption, because when you start asking about efficiency, then you have to bring in the Jevons paradox, which explained that energy efficiency causes increased energy consumption. And that's because if you, say that you, I don't know, you manufacture 1 billion solar panels so that you can get more energy efficiency. Well, in manufacturing those 1 billion solar panels, you're going to mine a tremendous amount of rare earths. There's an international supply chain involved. You're going to need cargo shipping between stations. You're going to use a tremendous amount of energy to manufacture them. And so energy efficiency increases energy demand and demand of rare earths. And so we need to look at what reduces energy overall, and we need to look at how we can reduce our consumption household by household. And in order for that to happen, we need a different kind of leadership and a different kind of thinking.
Many people have said that to seriously deal with the question of global warming, we would have to reduce our standard of living from between 30 to 50%. And that just will not happen.
Bob Stewart is trying to get in. Bob,
I was just disagreeing with many details. For solar panels, you don't need rare earth. For disposing of
you need silicon wafers. You need silicon. You have to manufacture
there are
silicon.
Industry studies on how to recycle these things. I get the trade press every month, and they are aware of the problem. They are dealing with the problem. The problem you're not dealing with is global warming, which is a total disaster for everything we're trying to save.
So in order to manufacture solar panels, you need silicon wafers. Do you know how silicon wafers are manufactured?
Yes, I do, and they don't involve rare earth.
They involve quartz, pure quartz gravel, then pure carbon, such as petroleum coke from the tar sands, and a hard, dense, moist wood, typically that can come from the Amazon, that's shipped internationally to a smelter that's kept at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, and that can only be powered by natural gas, nuclear power, hydropower. And those smelters are kept at that temperature for 6 and 7 years at a time. This only produces metallurgical grade silicon, which is only 98% pure. And for solar panels, you can only have 1 impurity part per million.
All right, we're not going to settle this.
I want to chime in here, because I think that the technological solution is the one that so many people want to go to. It's like magic. Okay, Silicon Valley high priests, rescue us. And I think, my father, he was born in 1910. He was in the Conservation Corps. And I really think we need to re-establish the Conservation Corps. And the job of the people in the Conservation Corps will be to go to everybody's house, everybody's apartment, every company's building, and address the energy efficiency of those buildings. This is low tech, simple stuff, but if they did that, they could make big changes. And I think that that's where we should start. Then we've got to look at the way we behave, and we've got to identify the things that we can let go of. You know, I smoked cigarettes for a couple of years, and I quit when I was 25. And what I did was I identified the different situations I smoked cigarettes in. And I quit the easy ones first. And I left it so that, but at the end, I had a couple hard ones left. You know, drinking a beer with people, that would be a tougher one. Driving to work, it grossed me out, but I would smoke a cigarette on the way to work. And that was an easier one to get rid of. We can identify our behaviors that use energy, and we can start letting go of some of them. But nobody even has a clue about that now. But this is all really low-tech stuff that I think that we can do. And I think it's kind of like the mask wearing, you know, about 70% of people are wearing the masks, and they're doing it because it's good for themselves and it's good for the people around them. I think that a lot of this could be adopted that way too. I mean, I think if people became aware of the behaviors that they could change that would decrease energy consumption, that could make a big difference. Katie, how are you measuring the 3% that you're cutting? And what are you doing to decrease it?
I stopped using the dryer, and I was on a speaking tour in Oregon in February before the virus started, and I mentioned that in Oregon, and everybody said, "Oh, you can't do that in Oregon. You can't dry your clothes on the line because they'll get moldy because they have humidity there, which we don't have in New Mexico." And I have a solar oven, and so as often as I can, I use that. Then I got a new website, and so that totally shifts me back into the consuming department. Walking is great. We don't have public transportation here that's really useful, and so I could do that more, but I'm not doing well with it. I'm growing more vegetables this year than I have other years, but all of this feels pretty lame. And I will also say, 2 years ago, I met this man named Sumya Dutta, who co-founded India Climate Justice. And he told me that in order to reverse climate change, we Americans would have to reduce our consumption by 70%. And then in balance, people in India and Bangladesh would have to increase their consumption so that they could have clean running water and toilets and some electricity. And that's what the conversation that really inspired me to see if I could try reducing my consumption by 3% per month.
But Rob, is there anything you can say that, because I think Rob's idea is a good one, but what kind of things can the average person do? And we don't have to wait for an inspector to come along, but there must be things that are, like Rob said, that are easy to do that we're not watching. Maybe.
I got one today. This very day, I bought a bicycle. Now I'm in a little county seat of about 15,000 people, and it's very quick to just drive here, drive there. But today I purchased a $35 5-speed bicycle. And
that's great. That's great. And I would say, one, I liked Rob's ideas very much. Another idea that I would say is that people should wait at least 4 years before they upgrade anything. And so every time you buy something new, all the energy embodied in manufacturing it, all the rare earths embodied in manufacturing it, become part of it. So we need like repair clinics, fix-it clinics, staffed by retirees, We're running out of mechanics who really know how to fix things. We need manufacturers to make modular electronics, modular things that, so if something breaks, it can be repaired. We need right to repair
We need
legislation.
to require manufacturers to build technology that is not designed to become obsolete in 2 years.
Right.
That would be
And
good.
obsolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Chuck Pinocchio just popped in. He's the one who talks about the 3%. We were talking about what the change would be if a handful of new progressives are entering Congress. And I cited you and your talk about the 3%, Chuck. Are you hearing? Can you talk?
Looks like he is talking.
I don't think he hears us yet.
I think he's muted.
I don't know. Are you muted there? No, he's not muted. Can he hear? I don't think he can hear us.
Chuck, can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Chuck? No. All right. Bottom left-hand corner is where the audio is. Anyway, I think we have to come up with, like buying a bike. By the way, bikes are more popular right now than they've ever been before, ever. I mean, it's harder to get a bike now. It's harder to get a used bike now. You're going to pay more for it now, and it's amazing. And I think that's because of coronavirus. I mean,
I have another idea, which is probably my best idea. I think we need forums where we can ask this question in our neighborhoods and say, what could we do to reduce our consumption? And then we could share with each other what we can do. And we'd start creating community. So we need that question in schools. We need it in offices. We need that question to become alive.
And the dryer thing, I started hanging up some stuff in my laundry room. I just moved, and it ends up there's some laundry ropes there, and I'm hanging stuff up. So the dryer doesn't have to work so hard. I mean, it's so simple. And I remember my mom would crisscross the whole backyard, and we'd have all these clothespins, and that was the way you dried things until she got a dryer.
Yeah. When I was living in Connecticut, I used to hang out at Unitarian meeting houses and at Quaker meeting when I would get fed up with the spiritual shallowness of the Unitarians. I would go over to the Quakers, and I became fed up with the intellectual shallowness of the Quakers. I'd go back to the Unitarians. So that's what I always do. When the Quakers believe in making a very soft footprint on the earth. When the hybrid cars first started coming out, Quakers bought them. A lot of Quakers bought them. Now, the Quakers are very wealthy people. They're some of the wealthiest people in the country, in fact, old wealth. But they went out and they bought hybrid cars because they believe in making a very light footprint on the earth. They live in simple houses. And these are people who could afford, much more. But they don't believe in being ostentatious. And I think some of those values are worth all of us to acquire.
Yeah, turning off consumerism.
They're absolutely essential, but when you think that probably, 80% of the world's population, talking, Western Asia, East Asia, Africa, South America, are all now pumping up a middle class that are striving to live in mansions like we do.
Right.
How do you turn that monstrous ship around?
Yeah, that's right. You can't.
I think part of it would be to tax the advertising that drives this whole thing. While I got the floor here, I'd like to say I've lived very cheaply all my life, kind of on a student budget. And if anybody wants help learning how to get along on a bicycle, let me know.
Speaking of bicycles, the place to find an affordable bicycle is on these neighborhood websites they have now. Yeah. I saw some advertised for ridiculously cheap, some very expensive bicycles.
I used a bicycle as my sole transportation. And I haven't tried one. I go from, I go out to Long Island, I go up to Westchester, I go everywhere on my bicycle. I
Wow.
love it.
In my Walmarts here, a proper quality basic bicycle is at this point about $62.
Oh.
That's cheap.
That's real. I mean, I went to Target and it was like 160.
Yeah. Well, you can get cheap bicycles at Walmart at this point if you string for them.
Well, you
I
know,
would not buy a
The other
department
day,
store bicycle.
they were almost out of bicycles. I mean, that's where things are with bicycles right now. Their bicycle racks were almost completely empty.
They have
get what you
public
pay for.
bicycles
If you
in
buy
big
a- If
cities.
you buy a cheap bike, you'll get one that will break down all the time. I buy Cannondales. They're expensive bikes. I would pay about $1,000 for them. But they run like iron. They're very tough bikes.
I paid $400 for my bicycle 43 years ago.
Must be pretty good.
That's
and,
not
and you're still riding it.
Over 100,000 miles now.
Oh man, good for you. Boy, that's
pretty cool.
fantastic.
Are you Scottish, Rob?
By my name, I sure am.
Of course.
I think that's pretty cool. 100,000 miles on the bike. Damn.
Wow. So
I may have
on most of the main streets in New York City, haven't they removed one lane of traffic for a bicycle lane? At least that's what I saw.
They're adding more and more bicycle lanes in New York.
Right?
which
I mean,
is kind of good.
it's causing more car traffic because there's fewer lanes, but there's, I'm sorry, that's what's got to happen.
I'd like to run the cars off the roads entirely. I don't see why we have to have cars in Manhattan at all.
They're
Yeah.
WMD automobiles. I always think that when I get into my car. And in Georgetown, they now have bike lanes, but the streets are so narrow anyway because they were made for horses and buggies, so it's kind of ridiculous and it's treacherous.
But in the DC area, they have wonderful bike paths. You could go from Virginia to Silver Spring and never cross a road.
Yeah, I didn't ride a bike in DC, so I didn't get familiar with that.
And I just realized who Biden's running mate is going to be.
Who's that?
Michelle Obama.
Really?
Yeah, I think if she agrees to that, it'll be a wipeout. Yeah, I agree.
Who is the comedian who started with Jon Stewart and then he's gotten his own show? I can't think of his name.
I know.
John Oliver.
Colbert.
John Oliver.
Yeah, Stephen Colbert.
Colbert is the one.
Yeah, Colbert. So Michelle Obama was on the Colbert Show. When he brought her out, he got a standing ovation that lasted a full 4 minutes. The people just wouldn't stop hollering and screaming.
Except for Queen Elizabeth. Everyone else loves her.
Well, she's not going to be our vice president. She's too old. But,
Yeah. Oh, come now. Come
I
now.
think the Prime Minister of New Zealand would be great.
what's that?
The Prime Minister of New Zealand would be great.
I agree.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
Anybody from Iceland or New Zealand, we should bring to.
I like the mayor of Atlanta. She's not necessarily the best qualified candidate, but I think she's charismatic.
Yeah.
I agree. I think she's a top level person on the list too.
Who's that?
What's her
Mayor
name?
Bottoms.
Bottoms, yeah.
Yeah.
Haven't seen her. I'm just curious, take a minute for this. Did anybody see Paul Smart's article on basically on the funding of Black Lives Matter? You ran it, Rob, just a couple of days ago.
Who wrote it?
Paul Smart? Do I have the name right?
Actually, he wrote that a couple years ago.
Oh, right, and he republished, that's right. That was 2017 it was first published.
Yeah. No,
But
it's interesting. You know, I've heard from a number of people that Black Lives Matter protests are fake, that they're funded by billionaires, that they're funded by the Kennedy Foundation, and there's some truth that they're getting some funding. I don't have a problem with that. What's wrong with that?
well, if you read the article, Smart.
I read the Mike Whitney article, if that's the one we're talking about, and it all basically gets back to conspiracy theories about, well, support from one world government folks and maybe the government of China. I read the one you're talking about, and I found it really a mess of conspiracy and maybe pseudo intellectualism, and that's, I'll tell you, it got panned over at Veterans for Peace.
Government of China, I missed that part.
You don't need funding to go out and protest. I've protested dozens of times. I've never spent more than $20 probably, maybe just on materials for signs.
Yeah, but apparently the Kennedy Foundation gave Black Lives Matters $100 million.
Or the Ford Foundation, or lots of similar foundations. But so the point is that money comes with strings attached. You know, that you will protest for certain things and not others. You will make, demands for structural changes at certain levels, but not others. I think was the point of Paul Smart's thing. I think it's worth reading. I'll read it again, Bill, if you think it was.
I mean, Paul Street is a pretty radical guy. He's a far lefty guy, and
but he does his homework.
Yeah, and he's not the only one saying it, but I really feel. I think that it's a very exciting thing what's happening, and I think it's a lot of good stuff, and maybe those lefty liberal organizations did something good.
I'll tell you, at the end of
stumbled into something good.
At the end of the Mike Whitney article, he actually had he used the phrase "faux COVID pandemic," and right then I'm thinking, well, how much do I want to believe if he's calling what we've got a faux pandemic? Because
that's Mike Whitney. That's not what we're.
Mike Whitney wrote a similar article. Now, let me just give you a little background. Yeah. Mike Whitney sends me the articles to run. I like a lot of his stuff. Not all, but a lot of it. Yeah. But this one, I just said, you're attacking Black Lives Matter. So there was Paul Street wrote an article about the financial roots of Black Lives Matter that just was published on OpEdNews that he originally wrote about 2-3 years ago. Yes. Mike Whitney just came up with this one where he's kind of putting together some ideas, a lot from the World Socialist website and a couple other people. And I mean, I just don't buy it. This is some of this is along the same lines of what Paul Craig Roberts is talking about, how there's a war against whites now. And to me, it's marginalizing what I think is a great thing that's happening right now, the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that have been going on for a month. And I
agree, Rob.
Very hopeful and very positive. And I think that the people who are trying to shoot it down and say, oh no, this is because of the Kennedys, $100 million, and it's not real, it's not a real protest. Or another thing I've heard is, well, it's not really what's important. They shouldn't be protesting police, they should be protesting wealth inequality, or they should be protesting the excessive power of the extreme wealthy, or they should be protesting global warming. And, that reminds me of people who were conspiracy theorists back in the 2006, 2005 time, where somebody would write an article about an issue, and then a 9/11 truther would come on the comments and say, this doesn't matter. Why are you talking about this? The only thing that matters is 9/11 truth. And I get the same kind of a feel from these people that are going after Black Lives Matter now. And I don't know. I mean, and we published at least 1,000 articles about 9/11 truth until we got tired of rerunning the same thing from somebody who just discovered about Building 7.
I remember.
Yeah, but I think that, I'm seeing progressives who are basically giving voice to right-wing narratives that marginalize activism and protest. And one of our editors has said to me, well, do you believe in trolls? Do you believe that people come on a website to try to change the conversation? And I really don't think there is that much of that going on. I just don't over the years. I don't think we've had that many people where we've discovered that they were paid people working for the government or working for anybody else. You know, we had the head of public relations for Monsanto come on when we were talking about Roundup, but it was him, and it wasn't a fake. You know, he came on and attacked me, and God, I felt proud about that. But you know, most of the time, it's not that, and I think that what is happening though is that some of that stuff is going on, and progressives are buying it, and then they're coming up with this message like we're attacking whites or Black Lives Matters is really not real. You know, as soon as a right winger brings up Soros, I laugh and I just turn off any attention, any credibility I might have given that person in the conversation. You know, because, you know, Soros is behind this and that and everything.
Oh, that, yeah.
You know, usually, and a lot of times Soros will come up with Antifa.
And the Whitney article I'm talking about did incriminate Soros to the tune of about $39 million.
Yeah, well, Whitney, and basically I told Mike, I'm not going to run it. But then, you know, we have volunteer editors, and one of the other editors went with it and ran it because he agreed with it. You know, that's part of, I think, the beauty of OpEdNews. You get different.
Yeah. But what you touched on, Rob, is the question of America's original sin, which is racism. And it's a very difficult issue that touches people at different levels. I mean, there's a gradation of people from anti-racist to pro-racist. And frankly, you know, I was raised by two racist parents, and I'm going to put my cards on the table and say that, you know, that I look at the race issue through a filter, and I'm very self-conscious about the fact that I was raised by two racist parents, and that I need to and I work very hard, frankly, to overcome that. And my politics, I think, illustrate that effort. But that takes a lot of work, and most people are not willing to put in that work. All I'm saying is that we're talking about a 400-year history of racism in this country that really plagues our politics. It plagues our ability to move forward. And what the ruling class does is constantly uses race to divide us. Yeah. And I work specifically in the area of universal health care, right? Single payer Medicare for all. And my study says that more than any other issue, racism has kept us from achieving universal health care, because to get universal health care means including the other, right? Including those people who don't look like us. And I think, if I don't have everybody on the screen here, but I think we're all white people here. And that's not a condemnation of who we are, but it's an acknowledgement that these conversations need to be elevated to a higher level. And we need to understand that race is a serious, serious problem. I'm coming off an earlier call today with Reverend Rodney Sadler, who is a cohort to William Barber. Many of you know him as the leader of the Moral the Moral Mondays, the People's
Poor People's Campaign.
What's that?
Poor People's Campaign.
Thank you. Right, which is a continuation of what Martin Luther King was doing at the end of his career, right, when he was assassinated in 1968. So race is a serious problem that we all need to look at and understand that it plagues American history, it plagues our reform politics, it plagues how we look at moving forward on any number of issues. So it's something I wrestle with all the time, and you know, I appreciate you all coming together and thinking about that, reflecting on that. So thanks.
I'd like to agree with you, but I think the issue is much more complex than that.
Sure.
First has to do with the oligarchic structure of
right.
the American polity.
Race and class. Race and class together.
Was written by a bunch of wealthy people to protect the interests of the wealthy, and that has constrained our ability to make progressive change. The second thing is we've had enormous sectional issues, not counting race, but what killed progressivism, the populism rather, I'm sorry, what killed populism was when the leaders of the populist movement wanted to align themselves with the urban ethnic manufacturing people. And the populist farmers would have none of it. They didn't want anything to do with those urban ethnics. And so we have those problems we still deal with today. And the third issue that we deal with is this country has always placed great emphasis on ourselves as individuals. We are individual competition. We've never placed any value on people working together cooperatively. The wealthy have always tried to kill the labor union movement, for example. And any time that people start to invest, like credit unions and things like that, start to invest in themselves, that has been discouraged by the wealthier people. And so we have all these factors that work against our coming together as a people. It's not solely racism.
But it starts, though, with racism. And Hugh, I agree with your analysis 100%. Truly, I do. But my point is that it starts with racism, and that's what the class warfare is about, is using racism to keep us divided, to keep us down. So I actually agree with I think everything that you just said. I think we're absolutely in sync here. My only point is that it starts from this original sin in American colonial, right, British colonial 1619, right, is the moment when the first slave arrives in British North America, and from that point forward, we have this very, very charged social division that defines our social order, and so that's a starting point. But the class warriors, the plutocrats, the oligarchs, the plantation owners, whatever the construct, they've used race to keep white people, in particular, from unifying with non-white people to make the colonial America and then the Republic and then the United States of America a more whole place.
Well,
so I think I agree with you 100%.
There's a lot that what you say to that. The 1864 draft riots, the Irish in New York were very afraid of Black people competing with them for jobs. The Irish were willing to work for almost nothing, and the Black people were willing to work for even less than that. And
that's right.
It created a huge explosion. And those kind of tensions have been encouraged in this country throughout our history, and it's scary. And those tensions still exist today.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're on the same page. I really do.
I'll throw in another little piece. What's his name? Sean. What's his? He's a guy who.
Sean King. Sean King.
Yeah, Sean King. He posted something saying that we should get rid of images of Jesus as white.
Yeah.
And what was amazing was
that hairdo.
The head of the Church of England agreed with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and it's just like pushing the envelope. We really have to push the envelope. We're so stuck. And even those of us who want to be awake, we're so stuck and programmed with what we've been programmed through our entire lives, who the educational system is.
That's right.
We need people like him to push that envelope, to stretch us and challenge us to think of things in new, different ways. And it's like
people believe what they want to believe.
Right. Right.
People believe what they've been taught to believe.
Well,
there's this iconic mural in South Philadelphia of Frank Rizzo, and it's been wiped out.
Yeah,
the Frank Rizzo statue near City Hall has been taken down. Frank Rizzo was former mayor of Philadelphia.
Racist.
This is not insignificant. It's not insignificant.
Yeah.
It's actually big. It's a huge development. It really is.
Yeah, the former police chief even more relevantly, because he was the tough cop in his era.
Will there be any statues of white people left in this country? Not even Tom Paine. I read all of his works, you know, really enthused, saying this is the good guy, and turns out he's an anti-Semite. But I guess everybody was.
Tom Paine was, really?
Yes, yes. Read his writings. He says a lot against the Jews.
Meanwhile, it's we're supposed to finish at 9:30, and we're way past that. We got to wrap it down. And any final words anybody wants to get in?
This is a good
Well,
discussion.
statues ought to be in museums so we can contextualize a real discussion. Statues ought to be replaced in museums.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. Hopefully see you next week.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, everybody.